In the summer of 1875, in a log cabin on a rice and cotton farm near Maysville, South Carolina, Mary Mcleod was born. She was the 12th of 15 children, born to Patsy and Sam Mcleod. The Mcleods were former slaves, and after emancipation, Patsy worked for their former owner, and with her earnings, he sold her 5 acres of land, on which Sam and his sons built the cabin in which Mary was born. As a child, Mary would accompany her mother to deliver washing to the white families while she would play with the family's children. She was fascinated by their toys, and one day, when she picked up a book and opened it, one of the children took it away from her snidely, telling her she didn't know how to read. The incident stuck with her, and later in life, she said it helped her to understand the racial inequality in education. Mary went to an all-black one-room schoolhouse in Maysville, which was run by the Presbyterian Board of the Missions of Free Men. She walked to school every day, the 5 miles back and forth from her home, to attend class. And when she came home, she taught all her siblings that didn't attend school. Mary excelled in her studies, and her thirst for knowledge did not go unnoticed by her teacher. She helped Mary obtain a scholarship to the Scotia Seminary, after which she enrolled in the Moody's Institute for Home and Foreign Missions in Chicago, with the intention of becoming a missionary in Africa. But when she applied to become a missionary, she was told there was no need for black missionaries. Undaunted, she decided to teach. After returning to teach at her old school in Maysville, she relocated to Augusta, Georgia, to the Haynes Normal and Industrial Institute in 1896. While at the institute, its founder, Lucy Craft, the daughter of former slaves herself, emphasized a practical education and character for black girls, with emphasis on a Christian foundation. Mcleod was impressed and inspired by Craft's approach to education, dedicated to giving her students the abilities go further in life. Mary adopted many of Craft's teaching methods and incorporated political activism into her own curriculum. After just a year at Haynes, she was transferred to the Kindle Institute in Sumter, South Carolina. While in Sumter, she met and married Albertus Bethune in 1898. The couple moved in 1899 to Palatka, Florida, to run a missionary school, but Mary wanted to start her own school for girls. They decided to relocate to Daytona, which had become a major tourist destination, creating great economic opportunities and thriving businesses. Determined, she rented a small house. They built desks from old crates, and after acquiring some other needed items through charity, in 1907, she opened the Educational and Industrial Training School for Negro girls. From its humble beginning, where her first 6 students made ink from elderberry juice and pencils from shaved burned wood, she began to teach. She approached local businesses to acquire furniture, and the local black churches joined in to help with donations, school supplies, and labor for improvements to the school. By her second year, she had over 30 students in attendance. Her success became well known to the wealthy, who had been attracted to Daytona. Mary was not only determined, but she was also powerfully charming and not shy to court the wealthy white society women's organizations, which led her to invite prominent men to sit on her school board of trustees. Such men as Ranson Eli Olds, James Gamble of Procter & Gamble, and Thomas H. White, all of whom became benefactors as well as participants on her board. Her school conducted classes in industrial and home economic skills such as millinery, dressmaking, cooking, along with business courses, high school mathematics, science, English, as well as foreign languages. Daytona at the time did not have a hospital for black people, who were deprived service from the city's facilities. When one of her students became ill with appendicitis, there was no hospital to take her. Bethune insisted that the physician at the local white hospital treat her. When she went to visit her student, she found her ill-cared for and segregated to an outside hospital. Determined as always, along with sponsors, she managed to raise $5,000 to purchase a cabin near her school and opened the first black hospital in Daytona. It grew in just a few years from 2 to 20 beds, and was staffed by both white and black doctors, along with student nurses, from her school. Ever the fundraiser, she followed the advice that Booker T. Washington gave her, upon his visit to the school in 1912, of the importance of gaining support from white benefactors. She traveled often seeking donations to continue operating and improving the school. Her organizational skills led her to become the president of the Florida chapter of the National Association of Colored Women, which she served from 1917 to 1925. When she was elected the NACW national president. She was also named president of the Southeastern Federation of the Colored Women's Club in 1920, at their first conference held at the Tuskegee Institute. During her time as president of the Florida chapter, in 1920, the 19th Amendment went into effect, granting women the right to vote. Bethune, through the organizations, and through her institute, launched their program to register black and white women voters. Florida, and other southern states, placed obstacles in the path of black voters by requiring black people to pay a poll tax and pass a literacy test as well, before they were allowed to vote. She raised money to help people pay the poll tax and provided tutoring for the literacy test at her institution. Once she became national president of the NACW, in 1925, she felt the need for a national headquarters for the organization. And through fundraising, they established their headquarters on Vermont Avenue, in Washington, D.C. By this point, Bethune was attracting national recognition. And along with other donations she had obtained, she even managed to secure a $62,000 donation from John D. Rockefeller. President Calvin Coolidge, in 1928, invited her to attend the Child Welfare Conference in San Diego, California. Then in 1930, President Hoover appointed her to the White House Conference on Child Health. By 1931, the Methodist Church aided in merging her girls' school with the all-boys Cookman Institute to create the coeducational Bethune-Cookman College. Bethune was named president, and during her tenure, the school went from a 2-year junior college to a fully accredited 4-year school, meeting all the Florida educational standards. Bethune was needed in Washington at the NACW headquarters. Fundraising had declined, as the nation was now in the grips of the Great Depression. But true to her nature, Bethune found the funding to keep the organization afloat, despite the odds against her. Then in 1935, she founded the National Council of Negro Women, in New York City, bringing together 28 different organizations to improve the lives of black women and their communities. Franklin D. Roosevelt had become president in 1933. As president, Roosevelt created a federal agency called the Works Progress Administration, better known as the WPA, to help put unemployed Americans back to work. Part of this program was the National Youth Organization, devised to provide relief and jobs for 16 to 25-year-olds not attending school. Bethune lobbied the administration to include minorities in the program, which in 1936 earned her a full-time position as an assistant to the program. And by 1938, she had been appointed the director of the Division of Negro Affairs. During this time, she had met and developed a friendship with the progressively minded Eleanor and President Franklin Roosevelt. Through her friendship with Eleanor, she enjoyed unusual access to the White House. She used this access to form a coalition of black organizations as the Federal Council of Negro Affairs, which served the president as an advisory board, sometimes referred to as the Black Cabinet. While director of the Division of Negro Affairs, in 1939, she made sure that black college students were able to enroll in the civilian pilot test program, which produced some of the first black pilots. And during World War II, through the NCNW, she gained the right for black women to be commissioned as officers in the Women's Army Corps, and was later appointed as the Special Assistant to the Secretary of War. She had served under 5 presidents, and she was well known in the press for her achievements. After the war, Bethune continued to travel, promoting racial equality in education and civil rights. In 1945, she helped co-found the United Negro College Fund, open to any minority student of the 37 black colleges and universities throughout the nation. Later, in 1949, along with W.E.B. Du Bois, as representatives of the NAACP, she attended the founding of the United Nations in San Francisco. Her personality many found to be overwhelming, and although she carried a cane, it was more for effect than necessity. She said it gave her swank. She was truly loved. Her teachers and students in Daytona referred to her as Mama Bethune. Then in the spring of 1955, Mary Mcleod Bethune died of a heart attack on May 18. The New York Times reported that she was one of the most potent factors in the growth of interracial goodwill in America. The Christian Century printed that the story of her life should be taught to every school child for generations to come. The Washington Post said, so great was her dynamism and force, that it was almost impossible to resist her. And in her hometown, the Daytona Beach Evening News printed the lesson of Mrs. Bethune's life is that genius knows no racial barriers. Throughout the country, schools have been named after her. Along with other honors of recognition, in 1985 the U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp in her honor. On July 13, 2002, a statue of Bethune was unveiled in the U.S. Capitol, giving her the honor to be the first Black American represented in the National Statuary Hall collection. And in 2022, Daytona Beach erected a bronze copy in her remembrance. It can be said that during her lifetime, Mary Mcleod Bethune labored to uphold the promise of the American dream to the disenfranchised people of the nation. Her determination and perseverance, while ignoring the social inequalities of the time, enabled her, along with others, to bring to the black communities the opportunities previously held back by society. Throughout her life, she exemplified the true nature of the American spirit. Never daunted, she strove to improve the livelihoods of all the participants of the American experience.